Do you ever have a game that no matter how many times you've played it, how well you know every inch of each level, where every enemy NPC is going to spawn, all its secret areas and everything the game has to offer, you still go back to it every now and again for another playthrough? Well, that game for me is Half-Life 2.
Welcome to City 17.
Now, I've already made a video in the past about Half-Life 2, but if I'm being completely honest, I'm not too proud of that video, as it was completely rushed and I don't think I got what I was really trying to say through in the video. So I thought today I would cover a similar concept and talk about Valve's single player games and what makes them special. Nowadays, Valve is known for being the biggest online marketplace for PC games with Steam, starting a completely new trend of PC gaming devices with the release of the Steam Deck, and of course multiplayer games like Counter-Strike still going strong. But when I was younger, I knew Valve as one of the most prestigious developers in the gaming industry, known for making some of the best single player experiences we had ever seen, and also having a part to play in some of the PC's biggest multiplayer games, such as Counter-Strike and Garry's Mod. It is a real shame that Valve don't really make games anymore, but if we're being honest, they don't really need to. Steam is the most popular marketplace for PC gaming, and the Steam Deck is also very popular, so there just really isn't any need for them to do so. But recently, there has been rumours suggesting that Valve are actually working on Half-Life 3, and no, this video wasn't originally uploaded in 2011, it's a fresh rumour in the year 2025. Let's face it, it's not going to happen, and that game is never coming out. The last single player game Valve released was Half-Life Alyx, a VR exclusive, which I've never played because I don't have the capacity. But if, just maybe, there's a little tiny chance that Valve are working on Half-Life 3, I thought I'd take a look back at what made their single player games so special in the first place. Now in this video I will be talking about all the games in the Half-Life series, apart from Half-Life Alyx, and of course the Portal games. Now I was thinking about talking about the Left 4 Dead series, but seeing as that's more of a multiplayer game, I decided to leave it out. Maybe I can revisit that series in another video. And of course there might be some minor spoilers for all games. So without further ado, let's get into the first game. Before I actually start speaking about the original Half-Life, I think it's important to start with how Valve came to be. In 1996, Gabe Newell and Mike Harrington created Valve. The two previously worked for Microsoft and decided to start up their own video game company after talking to John Carmack, founder of id Software, who convinced them to make a game on a modified version of the Quake engine. Half-Life was originally shown at E3 1997, where it quickly became the most popular game at the Expo. It was set to release later that year, but the team at Valve decided to take what they had learned and build upon it, essentially rebuilding the game from the ground up, and just 1 year later, in late 1998, Valve would release Half-Life. So what made Half-Life special? Well, to understand that, we need to go back to the 90s, to just take a look at what other single player shooters looked like. We had games like Quake and Doom. These games would essentially just drop you into a map with a gun in hand, blasting some crazy rock music in the background, mindlessly mowing down hordes of enemies. When it comes to story, well, you'd get one sort of. Sometimes you'd be treated to a little paragraph describing what's going on or what's about to happen. But it's very basic stuff, before being put straight into the game and given a gun almost instantly. Compare that to Half-Life's introduction, where you don't get a gun for the first 15 minutes. Instead, Valve decided to use the opening to tell the story, which is set in Black Mesa, a government research facility where you play as Gordon Freeman, taking part in an experiment which accidentally opens up a portal to another world called Zen. You then spend most of the game traversing the facility, trying to stop whatever chaos you've caused, all while trying to survive against soldiers who have been sent in to clean up the mess. Honestly, the story isn't the reason Half-Life is remembered so fondly. It's not bad at all, but the reason it's looked at as one of the best games ever made is due to the way the game progresses through that story. The opening is a perfect example. Even though it's the dullest thing in the world nowadays, it did a good job back then to really show the size of Black Mesa and how many obstacles you were going to face throughout. Even after you get off the train, you still have to walk around to get your HEV suit and make your way through the test chamber, and interacting with NPCs on the way, and just being a bit of an arsehole.
My God, what are you doing?
Why did you do that? Funny.
Once the shit hits the fan, however, the game completely changes. Now you're trying to fight your way through with nothing but the famous crowbar. As the game progresses, you'll obtain new weapons to help you get past the more intense situations. For me, what sets Half-Life apart from all its competitors, and even some modern FPS games, is its atmosphere. Now you're going to hear this a lot in this video, but Valve have a certain something that just makes their single player games feel so good to play through, and that's even present in the original Half-Life. The game doesn't use music all too much, but when it does, it's used perfectly. Like when you start the chapter Unforeseen Consequences, right after the failed experiment, you hear this song, known as Space Ocean. And it's moments like this that just stick with you. Most of the music in Half-Life, and even most of the games I'm talking about today, were composed by Kelly Bailey, and it's because of this man that Valve's early single player games have stuck with me for so long. Not just the music though, but the overall sound design was just something we never really saw in an FPS before. Most games just pop a song over each stage and call it a day. Not Valve though, they wanted you to experience exactly what Gordon was going through every step of the way, making sure that you felt completely alone in this massive facility, with all the creepy ambient noises that are only interrupted by the horrible sounds of the aliens spawning in, or the creepy radio chatter of the soldiers. Another thing that is quite impressive is how the developers set up these little set pieces to tell the story. Obviously in Half-Life you're constantly in the shoes of Gordon, there's no cutscenes or anything other than the world around you to tell that story. That comes with its own challenges, because you can't always tell where the player is going to be looking during certain scenes, so Valve would try and grab the player's attention just before one of these scenes took place. The two that stuck out to me are the massive tentacle monster grabbing one of the scientists, and the reveal that the soldiers aren't there to rescue you. Both technically could be completely missed by the player, but the developers set them up in such a way you're immediately drawn to what's happening. My favourite parts of Half-Life 1 have to be the times you head to the surface. It only happens about 3 times, but for some reason, these are the parts that stick out to me the most. The first time you see the outside is an absolute shit show, with soldiers everywhere, bombs being dropped, and just all hell breaking loose. So much so you end up trying to get back in the facility as quickly as you can, because the headcrab zombie infested Black Mesa seems to be way safer than whatever the hell is going on up on the surface. The second time you come up, and my favourite, is when you have to head to the silo to launch the rocket. It's now night time, and after taking out the soldiers you get to enjoy a few moments of peace before heading back into Black Mesa. I don't know what I enjoy so much about this setting at night, but it's the same feeling I get when watching really old episodes of South Park, when it's set during the night. Maybe it's just the janky 90s textures or something about the atmosphere that I feel so nostalgic about. Either way, there's just something so special about Half-Life level design and feel that makes it so enjoyable to play in 2025, which is crazy to think it's only 3 years until this game turns 30, which where most FPS games age like milk is crazy to think that the game is still enjoyable to play, as it was back then. Its gameplay still feels great, the weapons have weight to them, and I even played it using a controller, and it still felt amazing to play. I even played its fan-made remake, Black Mesa, on my Steam Deck, and I have to admit, I enjoyed the original a bit more, if I'm being honest. That's not to say Black Mesa is bad, by the way, it's an amazing remaster of the original, but I think it just loses something that they just couldn't replicate from the original game. After its release, a few things would happen with the Half-Life series. First, it became a massive success and launched Valve into one of the biggest names in the industry. Also, thanks to Valve being so open with the modding community, the original game would become the base for some legendary mods, some of which would become Valve games in the future, such as Day of Defeat, Team Fortress and of course Counter-Strike. Whilst all that was happening, we'd also get some expansions for the original game called Blue Shift and Opposing Force, which were developed by Gearbox, who would later become best known for the Borderlands series. The expansions would take place in the exact same timeline as the original, but from 2 different perspectives, one being the security guard Barney, making his way through the facility.
Well, it's about time. We don't pay you people to mosey around at your own convenience. Oh dear!
And then the other being from the perspective of Adrian Shepard, a soldier who's sent in to clear Black Mesa. Both expansions were received quite well, but of course just fall short of what the fully fledged main game had to offer. There were also 2 console ports, one for the PS2 which is actually pretty decent, but there was also one planned for the Dreamcast, which never released. I've played it and I can safely say it's not worth the hassle. The quirkiness of playing Half-Life on a Dreamcast soon wears off once you realise you only have one analog stick to work with. So yeah, I know you're thinking about it, but just don't do it. It's not worth it. Whilst Valve would leave these projects to third parties to work on, they would obviously be working on their next project, and it's safe to say it would change everything.
Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. Rise and shine.
What can I even say about Half-Life 2 that hasn't already been said? It's known as one of the best games ever made. Its legacy lives on through the legendary Source engine with things like Garry's Mod, and everyone is still hoping 21 years later that one day we see its sequel. Early in its development it looked way different. Over the years it's been known as the Half-Life 2 beta, which shown as a much more darker game than the one we got, which is crazy because the one we got was hardly an episode of the Teletubbies. But the crazy thing is, we almost didn't get the game at all. Valve was struggling with a lot of different problems during the game's development, mainly the game leaking early and a legal battle with their own publisher. I'm not going to go into too much detail on these topics, but I do recommend watching the Half-Life 2 documentary Valve released to celebrate its 20th anniversary last year. as they reveal some pretty interesting information in the years leading up to the release. We see glimpses of what Valve was working on, mainly the impressive physics in the Source engine before the game officially released in November of 2004 exclusively to PC. Anyway, what is it about Half-Life 2 that makes it so special? And that's something I've never really had the answer for. If you've never played it before, then it's really hard to explain to you why this game from 2004 was so special, and still so fun to go back to over 20 years later. But I guess that's what this video is all about. So for me, what's special about Half-Life 2 isn't its great gameplay or its great use of physics, but simply the way Valve yet again uses the world to tell its story. The game begins with Gordon coming out of stasis, where he was put by the G-Man at the end of the first game. It's been 20 years since the events of the last game, where the world has completely overrun by an alien race called the Combine, which took control of the world in just 7 hours, completely enslaving the human race and slowly draining the planet's resources in the process. Once you reunite with some old friends, you head off on your journey to try and destroy the Combine. Heading through old canals, headcrab zombie infested Ravenholm and various towns and beaches along the way. The scope of the game is already way bigger than its predecessor and feels way bigger, with each chapter feeling so distinct. I can tell just by looking at a second of gameplay what part of the game it is, whereas that might be a struggle with the original. All of the information I know about Half-Life 2's story is all from the game's world and characters. Again, just like the original, there really isn't any cutscenes other than the opening with G-Man talking to Gordon, but after that you're free to explore City 17, where you really get to see how bad things have gotten for the human race. Just by interacting with the NPCs, you see the civilians are all scared and paranoid.
Don't drink the water. They put something in it to make you forget.
You see the Combine really abusing their powers, also while Dr. Breen is speaking out over the city using propaganda to try and convince the people living there that it's for their own good.
Will they ever deactivate the suppression field and let us breed again? Allow me to address the anxieties underlying your concerns.
Right, you've convinced me. I know where I'm taking my family on their next holiday.
Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. And right now, you can save £50 per person. That's £200 off for a family of 4.
Just like Half-Life 1, it takes a while before you get a gun, but the game just uses the first 20 minutes to set up the world and story perfectly, before it sets you on your way. God, could you imagine Half-Life 2 if it was made by Infinity Ward? Captain Price, someone's helping the Combine get headcrab zombies into City 17. Soap, it's Makarov. He's in the fucking tunnels. Oh man, that's not a good idea when you've got a sore throat. Throughout the whole game, you will constantly be given more information about the world and what's happened since Gordon disappeared 20 years ago. It's this approach to storytelling that makes the Half-Life game so unique and such a blast to play through all these years later. But is that all that makes Half-Life 2 so good? Well, no. What makes it so good is its world. Half-Life 2 was one of the very first games released in the Source engine, and I don't need to tell you about the weird, uncanny feeling that the Source engine gives off. There's plenty of videos discussing that. For me, even though it sounds like such a stupid thing to say, Half-Life 2 has this weird early 2000s aura about it, which is obvious because the game came out in the early 2000s, but no other game from that era feels like this. I think it's mainly down to the Source engine, and how most of the textures were reused in almost everything in Garry's Mod, but something about the maps used in Half-Life 2 feel familiar, like I could visit these places, not now, but in 2004. I really don't know how to explain it, but hopefully someone out there knows what I mean, and if you do, please comment down below. It's for that reason why I find myself constantly going back to Half-Life 2's world to explore City 17 for the 1000th time. It's not just the worlds that make it special though, the sound design once again is perfect and matches the world beautifully. It was all handled once again by Kelly Bailey and the team behind him. It's not just the music, which I'll definitely talk about, but just the ambient noises of the world. There's channels dedicated to the ambient sounds you hear in City 17.
Attention protection team. Status invasion of programming in this community. Respawn. Isolate. Inquire.
Or even the outskirts on the beaches or in Ravenholm, but my favourite will always be on the bridge during Highway 17. Just like I said earlier, I don't know why I love this part of the game so much, but the sound design just gets me every time. The song playing is called Lab Practicum and is easily my favourite one of the soundtrack, and that's saying something because there's some absolute bangers on here. Ones that make you feel completely alone and afraid, and others that make you feel like you're in that rave scene from Blade. Each song fit in the mood perfectly. Ultimately, it was never the story or the gameplay that keeps me coming back to Half-Life 2, It was just the way the game feels in terms of its world. You can tell Valve put absolutely everything into every detail to make Half-Life 2 an experience you'll never forget, and they definitely succeeded at that. In the years that followed, Half-Life 2 would have 2 expansions released, titled Episode 1 and 2. These expansions would continue the story after the events of the main game. Both would be received quite well, with Episode 2 being the main standout. They didn't change much in terms of visuals or gameplay, but gave players more time in the world of Gordon Freeman. With a third episode supposedly on its way, we're still waiting. Some pretty interesting ports were released as well, including the D-Make released on the original Xbox. This port is more insane than them trying to get the original on the Dreamcast. The fact they even got it running at all is really impressive, and if you have the means to try it out, I would highly recommend it. It's such a unique way to experience the game. We also saw a port to Android technically. I say technically because it was exclusive to the Nvidia Shield. You know, the Nvidia Shield? That really weird looking Xbox controller with a screen gaffer taped to it? Well, I had one, and from what I can remember, the game ran pretty well, especially running on an Android device in 2013. Now, there are unofficial ways to get the game running on modern Android devices. I've forgotten how to do it, but just know it involves joining a strange Russian Discord server, so try it at your own risk. There was also this weird Japanese arcade exclusive version, which I don't have a Japanese arcade machine lying around, so I can't really talk about that too much. Then last but certainly not least was of course the Orange Box, which released on the Xbox 360 and later the PS3 in 2007. It included Half-Life 2 and its episodes, the multiplayer game Team Fortress 2, and a quirky little puzzle game known as Portal. Is ultimately a glorified tech demo. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to complete if you've never played it before, but if you're like me and could go through it with your eyes closed, it takes a little over an hour. Now, to be fair to Portal, it was never meant to be a full price game. I don't think I've ever seen it priced more than £10, so the expectations were never that high. Saying all that though, the game still manages to follow in the same footsteps as the Half-Life series by using its world to tell the story. The game starts off with you waking up in a test chamber with some calming music playing on the radio whilst being greeted by an AI voice, and I don't mean one of those annoying AI voices you hear on TikToks nowadays.
Yo, what's up, home slice? You ready to think with portals and shit?
Instead, it's a character known as GLaDOS. She instructs you for each test chamber while making funny little comments that get stranger and stranger as the game goes on.
The experiment is nearing its conclusion. The Enrichment Center is required to remind you that you will be baked, and then there will be cake.
Halfway through the game, the test chambers get more and more dangerous, with your life being put on the line with things like turrets and dodgy looking water that kills you instantly. It's during this time you start to find hidden areas with writing on the walls and other weird things. You start to realise something is off as GLaDOS keeps glitching and all the observation rooms you see are always empty. That's when the game hits you with the plot twist, and GLaDOS's plans are finally revealed. Another thing to note is that yet again the music and sound design is unreal, with the ambient sounds of the facility matched perfectly with the sterile environments. Things like the humming from the LED lights, and you match that with the amazing soundtrack, especially the song Self-Esteem Fund, and you get one of the most eerie settings in all of gaming. Turns this quirky little puzzle game into almost a survival horror. There's not much to say about Portal, as it's not that long. The mechanics are super simple. Shoot one portal on this wall, shoot another portal on that wall, and bam, that's it. It's a fun little game, but once you've played it once, there's no more challenge to it. I find myself revisiting it just to soak up the eerie atmosphere Valve have so perfectly crafted. There's not many ports to speak about. Obviously it was included on the Orange Box on the Xbox 360 and PS3, and a few years ago it was released on the Switch alongside its sequel. But one port I absolutely have to bring up is a fan-made D-Make of the game on the fucking Nintendo 64. Sadly, it's not available anymore because, you know, Nintendo. But the fact that this even exists is crazy. Massive props to James Lambert for even attempting this. It would be quite a few years before we'd see anything from the world of Aperture science, but like most Valve games, it was definitely worth the wait. After the release of the Orange Box, Valve turned their attention to a new project, a co-op survival shooter called Left 4 Dead. Valve hit it out the park once again, as the game and its sequel became instant classics. By the start of the 2010s, it was clear Valve were heading in a new direction, with multiplayer games like Left 4 Dead, Counter-Strike and Team Fortress 2 all becoming very popular, alongside the major success of Steam. Valve really didn't have any reason to release another big budget single player game ever again, but in early 2011 we got a trailer for the sequel to Portal, set to release that year. So, how was he? Well, look, I'm not going to sit here and say Portal 2 is a bad game. It's not. It just feels like it's missing something that the other games have. If you told me that Portal 2 was made in a completely different engine rather than the source engine, I would believe it. It just doesn't have that uncanny feeling that the other games have. It just feels different. Like I said, it's not bad. The game does a lot to build on what the original game did, with some new mechanics and things to play around with. The story begins quite a long time after the first game, as Chell, the character you play as, has been locked in stasis, when she's finally rescued by a helpful robot named Wheatley. The two then make their way through the now destroyed Aperture Science Research Facility to escape, but accidentally wake up GLaDOS, the antagonist from the first game. What follows is a trip through the history of Aperture Science, with few twists along the way. The major difference between the two games is the way the story is told. In the first game, all you had was the environment and the occasional quote from GLaDOS, and in this game you constantly have someone speaking to you, whether that be GLaDOS as a potato or quotes from Cave Johnson, the founder of Aperture Science, and of course Wheatley, a little robot fella who helps you out at the start of the game, voiced by Stephen Merchant.
Do you understand what I'm saying at all? Does any of this make any sense? Just tell me, just say yes. Well, you would if you had a fucking brain, you know?
Now, none of this is bad, and it's actually really well written, especially the Cave Johnson quotes.
If you're interested in an additional $60, flag down a test associate and let them know. You could walk out of here with 120 weighing down your bindle if you let us take you apart, put some science stuff in you, then put you back together, good as new.
Even though the game is fun and light-hearted, it loses a bit of that psychological thriller element you got from the original. The atmosphere's gone and the music doesn't have the same eeriness to it. Something just feels off. I remember the first time I had to explore the old Aperture Science thinking it was going to be just as creepy as the first game, but it's not. That feeling you got like someone was watching you isn't there. It seems like I have a problem with Portal 2, but I don't. The game is actually pretty great. The new mechanics like the gels and different cubes you play around with keep the game fresh. The whole part about exploring the old Aperture Science and learning the history of it was a fun way to take you out of the test chambers. The writing's great, and even though the music wasn't composed by Kelly Bailey, it did have its own unique twist, where depending on how fast you were going, the background music would change tempo to match it. Also, the game still looks great 14 years later. Overall, Portal 2 did everything it should have done to be the perfect sequel, but I can't help but feel that the feeling and vibe from the original was just a bit lost. There's only one port to speak of really. The game released on PC, Xbox 360 and PS3, but was later ported to the Nintendo Switch. That's about it. No weird ports to the Dreamcast or anything. Not yet anyway. It's been 5 years since Valve's last single player game, that being Half-Life Alyx. Sadly, I've never been able to play it. From what I've seen online, people seem to think it's one of the best VR games ever made, and that doesn't surprise me, because it's a Valve game after all. The one thing I've noticed with all these games is that you can tell everyone who worked on them poured absolutely everything they had into these games. Honestly, just watch the documentaries on Valve's YouTube page about the development of both Half-Life games, and you can see how much it meant to them. The way they crafted the worlds and made them feel real, and just as important to the story as the characters' dialogue, was something I haven't really seen in any other game. Going back to a Valve game is always fun. No matter how many times I've played it, they just seem to get everything right. Nowadays, we don't really get that anymore. Most games just seem pushed out with some shitty season pass or shite DLC stapled to it that no one cares about. This is the main difference between companies like Valve and Rockstar compared to EA and Activision. You'll never hear about a Call of Duty or a Battlefield game getting delayed, because they need to be out no matter what state they're in. They can just update it later. Whereas we constantly see companies like Valve and Rockstar pushing games back to make sure they're perfect on release day. When doing research for this video, I saw Gabe Newell say this in an interview.
If you ask your typical Valve fan, Valve's products are always late, right? Of the resource, quality, schedule, stool, we're always willing to relax schedule first to make it higher quality at the expense of everything else. Our view is that a product is late for a little while, but a product will suck forever.
I'm sure that's a quote from someone else, but still, I think even in a world of constant updates and patches, if the game releases day one buggy and unplayable, it'll be labelled like that no matter how many updates it receives. There really is no reason for Valve to make another single player game. They have IPs like Counter-Strike and Dota doing pretty well, and in the last few years started pushing SteamOS, their very own operating system, to compete with Windows. After watching the documentaries on both Half-Life games, the series seems cursed. Valve always seem to run into major problems when making them, so I'm not surprised they haven't released a Half-Life 3 or Episode 3. But there are rumours. Yes, in 2025 there are fresh rumours about Half-Life 3 being in the works. Who knows, maybe Valve will release it to run exclusively on SteamOS, but all I know is Valve have about 9 months to do the funniest thing ever, and that's us being able to say we got Half-Life 3 before GTA 6.
Thank you for watching today's video. If you're still watching, please consider subscribing, liking the video, or commenting down below what you thought of the video or just the games I spoke about in general. I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's supported the channel over the last couple of months. The last 2 videos have been insane. The amount of comments, the amount of likes and new subscribers, so thank you so much for the support. This video was actually delayed by a week just due to my recording software playing up on my Steam Deck, so I had to spend a whole extra week recording. Now, I didn't want to be a week behind because I know that the next video I'm planning is going to take a bit longer to make. I've got an idea in my head what I want it to be like, and I'm trying to make sure that I kind of reach that vision I've got. I'm overcomplicating it, but yeah. That video will be out as soon as possible. I am going to start working on it as soon as this video is uploaded. So what I'm going to do, in my community tab on my channel, I will post weekly of the update and the progress on the next video and give hints of what the next video is going to be about. So best way to keep up to date with that is to please subscribe if you've enjoyed today, and like and comment down below. That's it from me. I'm going to keep it quite short. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you when I see you.